Hello, everyone. Welcome to our webinar, End Bad Hires Using Predictive Analytics. I'm Jennifer Lawhead. I'm the Communication Manager here at TTI Success Insights, and thank you so much for joining us today. Before I turn it over to Bill Bonstetter, our Chairman and Founder of TTI, just a few things. If you're active on social media, we really encourage you to use the hashtag #EndBadHires today. We look forward to seeing your tweets and all the activity and hearing what resonates with you from today's presentation. As we move through the webinar, please feel free to type in your questions into the toolbar you see there on your screen, and we'll be sure to answer as many as we can after the webinar is complete. With that, I will introduce Bill Bonstetter, our president, also our president, but our presenter for today. Bill Bonstetter is the co-founder and chairman of the board of Target Training International and TTI Success Insights Incorporated. Established in 1984, TTI believes all people have unique skills and talents of which they are often unaware. And we seek to reveal and harness this talent using the science of self. With that, I will turn it over to Bill.
Good morning, good afternoon to those of you who've joined us. I look forward to spending this quality time with you, and I hope to trigger some ideas in your mind that will help all of us improve performance in our selection of dealing with people. One of my favorite activities is to talk to C-level people about people problems in organizations. And one of the questions I always ask them, do you have the talent to take your company to the next level? I rarely get anybody that agrees with that they do. They're scared. They're concerned. You know, what is talent? Do we have talent? I find many organizations have talent, but it's in the wrong jobs. And sometimes we need to be looking internally to see, do we have real talent here at our place that we've actually had in the wrong jobs many times for many years? So, also I run into people say they can't find talent. And I say, wow, describe to me what you're looking for. And they have trouble describing that. So again, I know you can't find things if you don't know what you're looking for. And so it's very important for us to go through a process to find out exactly what we're looking for in talent. I wrote an article years ago, If the Job Could Talk. If the job could talk, it would really identify the behavior that is most often used by this job. It would also identify the intrinsic rewards, the 12 driving forces, and then we could match people to that. I like the job to talk to us about both soft skills and hard skills. And I think that we've not paid enough attention to those competencies and soft skills in the past. And I'm finding more and more evidence to support the fact that they're critical to performance in most jobs. We all need to look at knowledge, education, and experience. When I talk to a hiring manager that says, I want somebody with 5 years of experience, I say, great. What skills did they develop in those 5 years? If you can't define the skills that were developed in those 5 years, then what is the value of 5 years of experience? In other words, we've got some bad habits that we think, a college degree and experience is all it takes to be successful. It takes a lot more than that. And that's what I really want to get into and talk to you about predictive analytics. I started this many, many years ago, and today we have better tools. Back when I first got involved in selection, we were producing assessments on 5.25-inch disc, 3.5-inch disc. And so you'd mail the disc out, people would respond, we'd get them back. It was just an impossible task to actually do good, solid research. Today with the internet, we're able to collect data easily from throughout the world. Last year, I spent some time going over 30 million decisions made by over 300,000 people throughout the world. And I guarantee you, I can tell you the differences of people in various parts of the world and the cultural differences. And you see that very, very strongly. But we do have the spreadsheets and the statistical analysis today to start seeing differences. Along with this predictive analytics, TTI has found that you must norm your assessments in every country. People are unique. Countries have unique cultures, unique behaviors. Um, there's a total difference between the amount of people in Russia compared to China. Absolutely two different ends of the spectrum. We look at correlations. I particularly like multivariate analysis where we're using different assessments, trying to really predict and come up with exactly what does it take to win at this company, at this job, under this management at this time. Also, validity and reliability has really grown in our ability to understand it and to work with that reliability of all our assessments. So this is leading up to us doing a better job, really, and we must get into the predictive analytics to find out how well we're doing. I've been doing job matching for a number of years, and 30 years ago, I would look at the top people and I look at the bottom people, and I would try to draw some conclusion of what was the difference. What did it take to be a top person? And small companies, that still works okay. But when you get into a big company, I find that the brand can be so strong that it can actually carry a weak sales force and sometimes weak employees. So a strong brand will distort it. So what I'm saying is that really, if you're going to do job matching, what you must really go after is do the job. Don't compare people just to your top performers, because I have looked at Fortune 100 companies and their top performers are actually be classified as a C minus. Okay, the brand was actually carrying them. And so if you're going to try to clone your top performers in a strong brand company, you might end up just cloning a C team. All right. So that's very important that we're looking at data. The other thing I think I need to caution people, we're all biased and we should let the data talk to us. We should not be looking at data and have any preconceived ideas of what we're looking for. Now, the key to predictive analytics is to address the truth here. I can't win a personality contest with any statistical program. So when I ask a manager, give me a list of your top performers, it may be that not their top performers, it's the people they like best. We end up in a personality contest, and I tell you, you can't win ever at a personality contest. No way do you win. All right, so you spend all the time, you crunch all the numbers, and then you think, well, everything is bad. No, you got to start with good things. The other thing I say, we got to use real numbers. All right, we have people that have assessments where they use a graph 3 where they actually average things. Those are not real numbers. You know, an average of 1 and 2 gives you graph 3, and therefore it's not really going to be that predictive in using for selection. We also have personal biases. It sounds a little bit like eliminating personality contests, but our personal biases is many times cloning people to be like us. Okay, anytime we have a good chemistry. When I first got involved in selection, I would send a company out 5 different candidates, and I would send them the best candidate first, and then the second, third, fourth, and fifth. And what I found out is by the time they had interviewed the number 5 candidate, number 1 had already got a job somewhere else. So I reversed it around, and now I ask people to interview 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. They will be able to see the difference in the improvement in the candidates. And at the end of number 1, many times they offer them a job on the spot. So it's just a little technique that helps us. Also, we got to analyze a job before we really can get into predictive analytics. And then we must determine the appropriate number of people for the selection. I put together a predictive analytics project this week, and we're going to collect an N of 200 people. It's a trucking company, and we're going to gather information on people that have not had an accident in the last 5 years and people that have had accidents. We're going to put them in there equal amounts if we can get it, and then let the statistical programs tell us what makes each one unique. I look forward to doing that because this is something where we can actually measure. There's real numbers, there's accidents, there's speeding tickets, there's various things that really can identify whether we have a good person or not. You know, in my 36 years in selection, I first started out, we just improved the process. In other words, if we could improve the process by interviewing questions, by telephone interviewing questions, by doing some screening, by looking at certain things, but we certainly weren't predictive. We were better than what they had been doing. But that's not enough because I find that just improving, sooner or later, they will throw it out. Okay? We actually need the analytics to prove that this really is effective and that it's saving us money. When I'm talking about improving the process, we could improve the turnover rate or retention, performance, productivity, all of those things. But I've discovered unless you really have the analytics to back it up and support it, somebody will come along and think they can still improve it even better and throw out, and we don't know that it'll go up or down. So we're looking for predictive performance. And predictive performance is very possible with this new studies that we can do. Here's another example. We did a preventable accident study. This was with a major utility company, and they gave us a group of people that had preventable accidents and a group of people that never had preventable accidents. We put them into a statistical analysis. We actually had to run it 13 times, 13 different formulas before we came back with an 81% predictability that a person would have an accident. It really struck out as I talked to the executives in that company. There was a person that had not had an accident yet, but the computer predicted 100% that they would have an accident at some point. And I thought, what great information to have, because now you could sit down with that person and sort of remind them of being safe, be concerned, and to think before they act. And utility companies spend a lot of money on safety. And so this type of study to predict the type of people that would have a preventable accident. I did a study of serial entrepreneurs. And after I collected, I had 178 serial entrepreneurs. We did a random selection of 178 people, just all kinds of people that are in our database. So we had equal numbers. Then we went to a multivariate analysis, and it came back if we would have used behavior only, we would have only been 60% correct in identifying serial entrepreneurs. If we used the motivators all by themselves, nothing else, we would have been about 60% correct in identifying serial entrepreneurs. When I combined the two, behavior and motivators, it jumped to 84%. And then when we threw in the skills, it jumped over 90%. So I don't believe any of our assessments or any other assessments in the world, one assessment will not do the job of being predictable. People are too complex, jobs are too complex, and therefore we must look at the total job and the total person. Another thing I found interesting is that the computer was able to separate the serial entrepreneurs into their own group 100% of the time by looking at one skill, and that was teamwork. All right? Serial entrepreneurs may think they're team players, but the statistical program says they are not when compared to other people. It totally separated them into the two different groups. So over the years, I've done lots of research with truck drivers, safety. A byproduct of hiring safer truck drivers is that you will lower work comp claims. You will actually increase your fuel consumption or increase your mileage. You will cut down maintenance cost. And the cost of accidents are extremely high. We fail to always put all the numbers to them that the total cost is. I've looked at railroad workers. They had to have 10 years of experience, and we looked at accidents, and we didn't decide whether they were preventable or not. It was just accidents or no accidents. Again, here we discovered just from behavior only that we could improve, but we couldn't predict. Okay, we could improve because we could identify the higher the D on the D scale and the lower the C, the more those people tended to have accidents. And the S factor also played in there. The greater sense of urgency was a key to identifying people who would have accidents. Identifying bad hires. I know we all want to hire very top performers, but it is actually easier to eliminate bad hires than it is to always guarantee a superior performer. Now, we did a study with a company, and for 6 months, they hired under their same process. We assessed all the people and controlled all the information. At the end of 6 months, we sent them a list of people that we said should not even be interviewed. They came back with an email that said if we would have had that information, they would have eliminated 97% of all their bad hires. So let me say this again. It is actually easier to eliminate bad hires than it is to guarantee superior performers. But if I eliminate bad hires, then I'm going to be hiring above average. And then I think our challenge in dealing with people is take above average people and move them up the scale. So I hope everybody is really picking up on that eliminating bad hires is good for you and for the organization. If you look at all managers and you find out, how do you spend your time? They don't spend their time with the top performers. They spend their time with all those dingbats that they wish they wouldn't have hired. And so we really must address that. The easiest people to really deal with on performance are salespeople. One, we've got a yardstick. We can measure it. We can identify it. And so this is where I would always recommend organizations start, because if we want to do some predictive analytics, we can do that. But I'll share with you a recent study. We had a customer who actually wanted us to do an analysis of their sales force. And so they gave us all their salespeople, and they ranked them from 1 to 26 over a 2-year period. 1 year, number 26 went to number 1 the next year. And as we got into trying to find out how they ranked them, we found out that they were ranked based on percentage above quota. And the quota didn't seem to be very scientific. It was a human picking a number. So the person that was number 26 had a $3 million a year quota the year he was in 26th place. The year he was number 1, he had a $300,000 quota. So there wasn't really anything we could do. We got to analyze territories and other things. And if you married the boss's daughter and you got the best territory, that could impact statistical analysis. So when I talk to people, I say, we don't come in and do this. We partner with you. We partner with you to really find out what does it take to win here. Leaders. I did some research on leaders to find out what are the skills that leaders have. And I found out the skills have 5 unique skills. Leaders have 5 unique skills. And I tell people, leaders need a compelling vision of the future. Then they need to be persuasive. You won't follow somebody that really can't persuade you to follow them. They need to be goal-oriented. You won't follow anybody that doesn't have a goal that's a part of their vision. They need to be personally accountable. You won't follow anybody that's not personally accountable. They also need great people skills, interpersonal skills, and they need to be somewhat results-oriented. So those skills, and I find many leadership programs that are not even teaching those skills. But these were leaders, proven leaders, and when we looked at their skills. Medical students. We did a study, actually a medical doctor did this study with our material, and he came back with the ability to look at freshman medical students, or not freshmen, first-year medical students, And he could predict their scores 4 years later within 1 to 5% based on looking at the data coming in. Now, here's the importance of that study. They only bring in X amount of dollars in the first year of medical school. They lose half of them in the 4 years. Their costs are the same, whether they have 100% of the students or half of the students. And so this is a major cost. So looking at predictive studies, and we continue to do this, many more studies worldwide. At the University of Nebraska, the College of Engineering, we could predict the college freshmen in engineering with 76% accuracy, those that wouldn't finish the first year. All right. It needs to be used. This information needs to be used to help people. Now let's take another look at another view here. Company culture versus job culture. I know there's some people out there that are hiring people to match the corporate culture. You know, is the sales department, does it have the same culture as the warehouse? In my opinion, no. And so it's good to know what the company culture is, but you really want to match a person to the culture of the job, because that's really where the intrinsic rewards come from. Okay? Jobs can dictate, and actually you'll get more performance, more predictability. I don't see how you could get predictability on performance in just matching up the corporate culture. You might have a happy team, everybody happy, but not necessarily everybody working. So how do we get really started with this predictive analytics? Number one, you got to identify the job. Identify a job that actually has some ability for us to be predictable, some way of actually identifying, eliminating those personality contests. While I'm talking about that, it reminds me of a study I did back in Iowa of convenience stores. We were looking at managers, and we did find that there is a difference between a manager in a major city of a convenience store and a manager of a smaller community. Okay, the smaller community had a totally different one. The manager in the big cities was different. So again, when we're looking at predictive analytics, I think it's always good to talk to people like me, because we've been there and done that. We've made those mistakes, and we will save you time. And in many cases, we could be predictive if we really would have had the right process going from the very beginning. Create key accountabilities. Key accountabilities are so critical to every job. They really define what the job does. They define why the job exists. And you can hire somebody in day one and show them the key accountabilities of the job, and they'll know what they're accountable for. A job description won't do that. So I say job descriptions are obsolete, key accountabilities are in, and if you really need a facilitator to facilitate the process of key accountabilities, because most of us are too biased on how we see the jobs. We need to have a facilitator that will really facilitate. If the job could talk to us, it would tell us this. It would identify these things. We've done that for organizations for the last 10, 12 years, and it really becomes the foundation for creating a benchmark to really look at. Once I've defined a key accountability, you can read that key accountability and you can usually identify the behavior, the driving forces, the skills, the knowledge, the experience needed to carry that out. So it just clarifies exactly what you're looking for. Then go through a process really of benchmarking the job. Once we've benchmarked a job, looking at what is the behavior, what is the intrinsic rewards, what are the hard skills, soft skills, experience, worldview, all of these different things, then I like to go and compare some of my top performers to that benchmark. This is going to give me some clarity, maybe, of what I'm looking for. And then it even clears up if I take some of my bottom performers and again compare them to the benchmark. Again, it will be helping us understand what really is unique about this job. And then I like to do the ideal candidate form. What I find most of us are guilty of is that we identify who we want to hire, and then we change the rules in the middle of the game, and we hire somebody that we like or that doesn't fit the job, or interview, this person's a good person, it's recommended by somebody. We get off the real key thing, and then we throw out the system rather than realize we're the one that maybe screwed it up. So the ideal candidate form, and on my ideal candidate forms, I even have telephone interview questions. So once I've screened the candidates down, I really want to interview them on the phone with a few key questions so that I'm saving myself time and money. All right? We can identify some of these things right up front. So the next step then is to advertise for the talent you need. When you do those key accountabilities, it will actually help you write the ads. When you start writing your ads for the job, you actually end up with better candidates. The other thing we have to do is look, where do those people reside that we're actually looking for? When I grew up in the Midwest, many times I had organizations run ads in the small town papers. There was certain talent we were looking for that was there. All candidates really need to be screened. Every one of us will end up making a bad hire if we don't screen, if we just start interviewing, because there's this old chemistry that takes place when two people are sitting there talking, and we sometimes fall in love with something that reminds us of somebody, and it's not necessarily what we really need to hire. So if you interview only the people that match the thing, in fact, once they match the thing, many times you could hire them all. Okay? Anybody that matches it should be an above average producer. I have worked with people and they've called me back and said, Bill, we hired more than one person. Why? They were so good that we actually created a new position. I'd love to hear that, because now people are starting to get their arm really around the talent. Collecting the right information to analyze. A lot of times people will call me up and they'll ask me, what assessments, what should we be collecting? And I always err on collecting more information when I'm analyzing the job. I really go in depth on analyzing the job, and then I may cut back when we're comparing people to it. I don't know until we really collect that data. So it's hard for us to totally recommend that, but it doesn't mean that we won't have some good ideas. Again, multiple assessments. This is critical. If you're only using one assessment, you're just never, ever going to get the predictability that you want. And today, talent is so critical. We're seeing the unemployment go down, and all of a sudden, we're really going to be scratching for talent out there. There is a lot of talent available, but you got to be able to identify it when it comes along. So I suggest multiple assessments. I always include behavior, driving forces, and skills pretty much as a basic thing. If I'm looking at minimum wage jobs, I might cut that back, but I will not do that for anything above 60,000. There's going to be 3, 4, 5 different assessments that would be used for all jobs paying more than 60,000 a year. So when do you seek advice? I think you need to seek advice after identifying the job. Because after you've identified the job, we really need to start talking to someone else to find out what needs to be collected. How many people are we looking at? If we're doing a small organization, 10, 12, maybe only got 10 salespeople. That doesn't mean that we can't run some statistical analysis. It would be a study that couldn't be published because it would not have enough people to meet the publication rules of magazines and stuff. But for small companies, that doesn't mean that we can't use that on ourselves, because we're not trying to write a book or publish an article. What we're trying to do is increase our productivity at our place. And so we don't want a small n to distort that, all right? And when you only have 10, 15, 20 people, you shouldn't run around the world saying that you've discovered everything you need to know about that, but you've discovered what it takes to work at your place, all right? So what I'm offering to do as a part of this today is to partner with you. I love doing this. I love being involved in this. And we agree that we won't even publish this information or make available the name of the company that's doing it. We don't want to distort that. But I will accept emails and phone calls from people after you've identified the job. You've defined the job, then a 5-minute phone conversation, we will identify the right assessments to use, the right process to use, maybe even come up with some numbers to use and some ways of comparing and putting the whole thing together. So I'm encouraging you to actually call me. I've got my phone number up there. It's a toll-free number, and bill@tti.com will get me via the email. I say I'll work with the first 10 companies, and you'll be amazed how nice I treat companies when they let me partner with them. And when you're partnering with them, you're both working to solve the same problem. I don't, you'll find out I'm not trying to sell you anything. What I'm trying to do is prove that we can help this process. And predictive analytics is where I want everybody to start going, all right? Because if the assessments you're using are not predictive, then you should have a problem, and this is the best way to prove it. So do we have any questions that have come in?
Yes, we do. And if anyone out there has any questions that you haven't typed in, feel free to enter them. We're going to be answering, I think we have a little bit of time for about 2 or 3.
All right.
So I will ask a few. One question we received, what size companies are well suited for a top-bottom performer study? Can you give a number of employees range, for example?
I like to take the top 10 and the bottom 10. So they need to maybe have 50 to 100 so that we could see that. On the top 10, when you describe the job to me, a lot of times I can identify 1, 2, and 3 in order. But you do start watering down when the number 10 is never as good as number 1. And that will actually be seen by the assessments that I will recommend we use.
Great. We have another question. Can the EQ be used for hiring? And for those of you who don't understand EQ, it's our emotional quotient.
At this point, we can look at the job, and if the job calls for emotional intelligence, then it should be a part of the equation. But I, at this point, recommend that you do this through interviewing rather than just relying upon the assessment. And the reason I'm saying that is I don't have the analytics to make that recommendation. But I do have the evidence to say we can look at every job and said, is there a need for emotional intelligence in this job? And if there is a need for this, we need interview questions to help us identify, does this person have control of those emotions? Because we all have emotions. It's do we have the ability to control it is the key here.
And I think we have time for one more. Bill, we have a question about the types of the 5 predictives of a leader. Can you review those again?
These were 5 skills. Now, what we look for is people who had mastered leadership. They were known leaders. They had evidence of their leadership. And then we gave them a skill assessment. And I looked at the skills that these leaders had. All right. Number 1, this is my personal bias. I'll name it in this way: personal accountability. Okay. If you don't have personal accountability, chances are I'll never interview you. Okay. Because I think all jobs today require people who are personally accountable. All right. If you're not personally accountable, there are government jobs or competitors that you could go to work for. But personal accountability. Goal orientation. You won't follow somebody unless they have a goal. Again, I mentioned that leaders always have to have a compelling vision. So we got personal accountability, we have goal orientation. We need persuasion, skill of persuasion, because leaders have to persuade people that their vision is doable and everything. They also have to persuade people of the goals. They need those interpersonal skills. These are just broad people skills. In other words, these leaders have the ability to actually work in all different environments, and no matter where they go in, they have people skills to actually maneuver around and make everybody feel good there. And then results orientation. Those were 5 skills that people who had mastered leadership had. And again, when I look at leadership programs, I've never found a leadership program that actually taught those 5 skills or addressed those skills. When we look at these skills, it's also important to note that they're not necessarily curriculum based either. These are practice based. And so if you want to be a leader, every time somebody says, I need a volunteer to do something, you need to volunteer. You need to run, if you got kids in school, ask them to run for the student council, run for class president, be involved in Boy Scouts, Girl Scouts, any activity where they could be involved in a team and have the opportunity to lead that team. This is where these skills are being built and developed. And this is why it's so important for us in business to understand that these skills come with experience. And when I talk to people about, experience, that's what I'm asking for. What type of these skills have they actually developed? And one thing about a leader, I found leaders that say things that I don't always agree with, but they say it in such a way as I don't get mad. Okay, they are true leaders. They can make you feel good even about things that you don't necessarily agree about.
I think that is all the time we have today. Thank you so much, Bill, and I hope you all take Bill up on his offer to reach out for free advice. Again, the first 10 companies that do so will receive Bill's time and expertise. We also want to thank you for your questions and participation. If you've been using our hashtag #EndBadHires, feel free to continue the conversation on social media throughout the day. We'll be monitoring that hashtag too. You can use our handle at TTI_SI. We'll also be sending you via email a recording within the next 24 hours. So expect to see that in your inbox. And that is it for our webinar today on predictive analytics. Thank you so much and have a great day.